Thank you for joining us tonight. Welcome to the Vets Helping Vets K9 for Veterans show. We have a guest tonight, Michael Stern. He is a Navy veteran. And I have a co-host, which is Mr. Jonathan Jans, my lovely husband. And I am Jill Jon Jans, your host for this evening. We are glad that you're joining us tonight. And we are going to talk about a somewhat sensitive topic, but very much needing to be discussed, which is MST. And Mike is going to explain to you what that is.
So MST defined by is military sexual trauma. It's defined by the VA and the Department of Defense as any unwanted sexual contact, advances, assault, rape, non-consensual sex. They did a very big blanket statement on that.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. Why don't you tell us what branch you were in, your whole background as far as your veteran status goes?
The United States Navy from 2005 to 2009. Did my A school and training in wonderful Great Lakes just north of us here and was stationed out of Virginia Beach, Virginia. Worked in the amphibious assault landing craft and ships. And
did you deploy?
Yeah, I did 2 deployments. First deployment was Middle East, and second deployment was Pirate Patrol for Africa.
Okay.
Wonderful Africa.
Good times.
Okay, so let's now move on to John. You want to take the?
So, Mike, how you and I met?
Wait, we're gonna start with his personal MST story. I thought
False. We're looking at the
sheet.
the sheet here, and the sheet says how Mike and I met.
Okay, sorry.
So
Okay, go ahead.
you got to keep the story flowing, babe.
Okay.
Let's do this. So I got a call a few years ago,
2016.
2016.
We were supposed to be on vacation. We were supposed to be in Alabama.
It was before that.
Yeah, it was right.
It was
It was right before we were supposed to be on vacation. I get a phone call from an individual saying, essentially, he needs help. If he doesn't get any help, he's going to kill himself by the night's end. Turns out to be this individual.
We went and we
here.
picked him up from his house.
We picked him up.
Said, "Hey, come with us."
And hung out with him for the next couple days. Brought him out to an event, and got him some assistance at the time, or some treatment options. And long story short, we've been friends ever since. So that's how Mike and I met.
He's come out to visit us a few times, and in the time being, come to family events and whatnot. So we're pretty close, I would say. And John and Mike have shared their stories with each other, and they know about their individual trauma experiences. So this being about MST, let's talk about yours.
So my MST occurred on the weekend of my 25th birthday. I was out on a 72-hour Liberty chit with the Navy. The long and short of it is was planned to meet up with friends, wasn't able to meet up with friends, decided to go out on my own, ended up being unconfirmed for sure, but drugged and raped by an officer in the Navy. It took me a long while, the morning after, deciding whether or not I wanted to report it or go kill myself, oddly enough. Decided that I was going to go and reported it to my command, was sent to the Naval Hospital the following Monday to get psychological treatment. The Naval Hospital forced me to go to alcohol rehab, where I was told by my treatment staff and counselors in alcohol rehab that because I was drinking the night of the incident, that it was my fault and I had to concede to that, or they would kick me out of treatment, then kick me out of the military as an alcohol rehab failure.
Sorry.
Wanted to stay in the Navy, so I played ball, and believing something long enough, it becomes what you think and what you believe and how you feel. Got back from my treatment and found gay pornographic material left in my rack by guys I'd worked with alongside for the last several years of my life. Done 2 deployments with most of them. Reported that to my command, and pretty much from that point started feeling like I was getting blacklisted. I went from engineering to medical department to supply department. 6 months after that happened, I got transferred across base to another command where they could essentially keep an eye on me with the hopes that either they'd transfer or I would screw up enough that I would get kicked out of the military. And it's inevitably what happened. I got a DWI in 2009 and was out processed as an alcohol rehab failure.
That's horrible.
I'm so sorry, Mike. So that's Mike's story. I know that there's a lot more stories like yours that are out there, and that some go reported, some aren't. And when they are, and when you get out, you're going to seek, like Mike has sought treatment. He has done it in multiple ways. One of the ways was he had reached out to his friend John and told him that he needed help, and he needed help as soon as possible. This was maybe about 6 months ago, I would say, right?
Yeah, I think I randomly showed up at your house in September.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Hey, everybody's welcome.
Yeah, no, it was nice having you, but
I'll be there in 4 hours.
cool, come on by.
But
So I went to work, getting in contact with the organizations that I have relationships with, and it was just not possible to find any programs for you.
we spoke with doctors. We spoke with our
civilian
personal
side,
doctors.
VA side. There was nothing specifically for male military sexual trauma victims, and in the 6 months since then, we were able. I say we. I didn't have much help in it, but we were able to get you into.
The Road Home program.
Well, two programs, one through the VA, and then you're currently in the Road Home program.
Correct.
Out of Rush University, correct?
Yes.
Which we've also had the person in charge of that on this show before, so I kind of thought this was a fitting guest.
But the problems there, it took months to get you into the Road Home program. I spoke with the director personally, and they pretty much didn't want you unless you went through another program first. Just I can't tell you
how difficult
how many
it was
hours
to try.
I spent on the phone talking to people, and you just didn't qualify for anything.
Yeah.
So
Which in our opinion was ridiculous, because you qualify if you are, and I don't use this lightly, but if you are suicidal, why do you not qualify for something that will help you survive? And especially when we have a rate that we have with veteran suicide and whatnot, how could you turn somebody away who's seeking help
Right.
to try and not end up as a statistic? And that was very discouraging for us, who we're not the people who are at the place that you were at. Like, we couldn't imagine what it was like for you.
So you put together a list of what was it, organizations and programs and things you tried to get into.
So
Explain that to me real quick, or break it down for us.
we found the Road Home program and was working on getting into the process of getting in there. That didn't work out right away. I started looking at the VA. The VA has the directive they came out with last year about every VA is supposed to have 2 MST coordinators, and they're supposed to know the programs. And part of this story is I'd left where I was and shown back up in Minneapolis, kind of where I grew up, and I'm hanging out with. It's a place that I can calm back down and be with good friends and family and just kind of collect myself and get myself to a place where I can be productive and I can get things done. So while I was there, the day after I got there, one of my really good friends, he's actually a guy who put me in the Navy. I still hang out with him. We went to the VA together. He came with me, and just to make sure I got things taken care of. If I, any legal issues to take care of, the mental health issues. First problem we ran into, I'm already in the Minneapolis VA healthcare system, and I'd seen a social worker in 2016 after I contacted John for a number of months, but we're in 2019, it's 3 years, lots of things have changed. I need something more than a social worker. Took about 5 hours at the VA between them finding one outpatient clinic for me to go to before I could talk to somebody. And then they scheduled me for an intake assessment, literally so October 7th, and I think my intake was the beginning of November. So it was a month later.
Big
Right.
gap.
And this was at that time. It wasn't for the MST we were trying to get you into a program. We were trying to get you into any mental health program for suicidal. I don't want to.
No, it's not ideation.
It's ideation
I
is
don't
what
wanna,
it is.
Right. So.
That's the medical term.
Okay. So suicidal ideation. It wasn't even coming into. We weren't even bringing the MST into it yet. We were just trying to find something.
We knew that was a part of it, but
Right.
we
knew
weren't
that was a
focusing
big part that
necessarily.
eventually would need to be addressed. But for the immediate future, we needed to get him in somewhere so that he didn't hurt himself. And it was.
It's unbelievably
it was
difficult.
it
It was
was
almost
a-
impossible task.
it was a joke. I
One of the
took.
programs Minneapolis wanted to send me to is they have a PTSD program
Mm-hmm.
for combat vets. The problem with me doing a MST program, or a PTSD program for combat vets is I don't have the issues.
Right.
You don't have PTSD
I
from
have PTSD, but I
but
don't have
I'm
the
just gonna say
association.
from a combat
Right. There's.
deployment, it's a PTSD from your MST.
Correct.
Right.
So
And that's.
it's very difficult to sit in a room. Me and John are very good friends, and we can share stories, but and he'll have empathy for me on it. But for him to really feel what I felt after my MST experience and after all of that was said and done is very different from what he went through in the Marine Corps.
Right, and that's a huge part of it. I mean, all three of us sitting here have PTSD from three completely different things. My wife had postnatal PTSD. Mike's got the PTSD from the MST, and I'm rocking the combat PTSD. But with that's awesome. But
We're PTSD pals.
yeah, we can't really relate to each other outside of this diagnosis because it's three completely different
Experiences that caused the PTSD.
and to try and to lop individuals of different experiences into the same group is
You're not gonna treat
it's
it.
an injustice.
Yeah.
So what happened from there?
So the next step we took is that day was kind of trash. We didn't get back to his house till 6 p.m. We ended up going to the vet center up there. And
Which is who we always talk about, John and
Right.
I. So we would have had hope, but
No, the vet center, I went in and talked to him, and I'm already registered with a vet center here in Chicago and a vet center out where I live in Utah, and this one in Minneapolis is a new one, but I've got all my information. I've got my service connection. I saw him on a Tuesday. They set me up on an appointment the following Wednesday. And I know vet centers are busy, but even my vet center back in Utah, I called to see if I could, I'm already in their system, and I'm like, hey, I need to come back in, I need help. And they had to call the regional director to get me in sooner than the month they put me out on. And that only
And see-
happened because I mentioned I'd been pink sheeted into a hospital.
what does pink sheeted into a hospital mean now? I don't know what that means.
If you're suicidal or someone's worried that you're suicidal, the police have shown up and taken you to the hospital.
Okay.
That happened twice in Utah, and then a third time with a
Right.
friend.
Okay.
In the week leading up to
And
you coming
week or
out,
two,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, the week prior to him coming to our house, he'd been in the emergency room on 3 separate occasions 4 suicidal ideations, and regardless
They let him
of
go.
his veteran status, we couldn't find a civilian or a VA program to take him in, and that's unset.
This is unacceptable. Like I don't know what other word to say of that.
so-
And see, now when John went in for when he had his dissociative episode back in 2011, he was it was 2012. Sorry,
Cool.
that
Get the date right.
matters
Get
to
it
me.
right.
Okay.
Get it right.
But so when he was going to the vet center, he called that day, and they got him in the next day.
Right.
Which I don't know if that's just strictly our
And
Orland Park Vet Center,
that's-
which
that's what we
you
came
guys
to-
are fantastic.
Right, the Orland Park Vet Center is just the pillar of excellence. They're the standard that everyone else
Absolutely.
should try to emulate. But we expected that same service from all vet centers.
And we even called our vet center. You called the woman who took you in that day, and
Right.
they were really concerned, and they tried to do as much as they could, but there's only so much you can do too. At the time you were in Utah.
Yeah.
And we were up here. So I mean, there was only, and like I could hear the concern in their voices, which was, I guess that's how I was able to tell who the best doctors we have and who the best people that we work with are, is the amount of concern I could hear and the deflation in their voices when they realized that there was little to nothing that they could do, versus the people who were just like, oh yeah, no, there's nothing.
Right.
Sorry, whatever. Like, so.
To even further reiterate how difficult some of this is, early in 2019, I had a little falling apart. And I wasn't suicidal yet, but I had a real issue with anxiety and panic attacks.
Mm-hmm.
And I was legitimately on my phone with the Veteran Crisis Line.
No, you know how I feel about them.
It's a love-hate. They were trying to help me, and I was at my local VA.
Mm-hmm.
And the best they could do in the psychology department was give me a nurse practitioner to tell me that I wasn't suicidal currently, so there isn't
Oh!
anything they can do for me right now.
Okay, so unless you're actually planning on killing yourself, then you're not.
And the Veteran Crisis Line couldn't get through on their switchboard. Like, you have almost essentially a part of the VA system can't get through to the VA.
Mm-hmm.
That's
So let's go forward. Let's go to your treatments. What you've been in treatment for the last 8 weeks now?
It's
Nine
been
9 weeks through 2 different programs.
Yeah.
Can you break down those 2 programs for us, or talk to us a little bit about them?
Yeah, so the first program I went to was a VA-run program, and it's a good program. Every program stands to have improvement,
Mm-hmm.
and if they don't continuously work on improvement, they're failing the service. But so the VA program I was at was in Cincinnati. It was a 7-week general PTSD program. Just to backtrack a little bit, so we can get it. So there are 2 MST programs that the VA has that are both male and female.
2.
One of them, 2. They have 10 programs total for MST. 2 of them
2 of them except men.
accept men. One only accepts men that live in Northern California, and the other one's got a rolling about 6-month wait list.
Okay.
The other 6 programs they have for general PTSD that offer MST experience. But we get
Not
into that
specifically for
conversation about where we were talking about we
Right.
all have different traumas. Like, I can relate to another MST patient whether we had the same experience or not, but it's difficult for me to relate to what Jill went through or what John went
Right.
through because I don't understand. I understand the emotions and the feelings and the things we tell ourselves, but how
Right,
that
and the basic things that
manifested.
go
don't have
along
that
with
frame of
PTSD,
reference.
like the hypervigilance, all of that kind of stuff that comes after your trauma, but the things that go into that specific trauma that caused all of that, that's where it's very, very different. And unless you're talking with somebody who has that same kind of thing that went into it,
trauma.
right, you're not going to get it, and you can empathize all you want, but you don't need,
You're not going to get the most out of that program.
no.
Correct. So this program, I do like the Cincinnati program. It's technically it's out of their Fort Thomas recovery trauma unit, and they run 3 different programs there. They have a women's MST program, men's TBI combat PTSD program, and then just a men's general PTSD program. Their program's 7 weeks. It's based on CPT therapy, which is cognitive processing therapy. I like CPT, just how that therapy works and how my brain works, they mix together very well for me. It's about changing my thought process on, I had a stuck point and a belief that everything that had happened to me was my fault. And we go through a process in therapy and debunk and reprogram how this is the evidence. Well, I don't have any evidence except for this. And the idea is like, everybody has stuck points, and I'm starting to get to the point where it's like I don't have the evidence to support that stuck point anymore. So all I can do is
Reevaluate what you're thinking and come up with a new.
thought. They call it an alternative thought, and I was a victim of a crime. I was a victim in a crime, and somebody else's intentions, and whether I wanted to control the situation or not, I couldn't. So the VA's got X amount of programs. The program I'm in right now is the only civilian program I've found that actually deals in MST. There are programs for sexual trauma out there that are run by civilians, but for veterans,
There's only one
for military.
military sexual trauma program that you were able to find in the civilian world.
Yes.
That is ridiculous.
And now let me
especially after
put
you say that there was a 6-month wait list
let me
for
just-
the one VA.
let me put a disclaimer out there really quick. These are our personal experiences, and this was
Right, there may be others.
right.
But finding them is like
we
pulling needles out
scoured.
of a
We're
haystack.
we're fairly, and I don't want to toot our own horns here, but I mean we're fairly well versed in finding this kind of stuff and helping people. That's why we do what we do, and this is Vets Helping Vets TV. This is we're in this area of expertise. Whether or not we're experts or not is a whole other story. But at the very least, we know that we did everything in our power to find the kind of help that he needed, for him to find his own kind of help that he needed, and it shouldn't be this hard. There's no reason in the world that it should be this difficult to find the kind of help that.
Right.
I spent 2-3 months with my counselor at my vet center in Minneapolis, working with him every week, calling programs, trying to find things out, and we even had a disconnect between vet center and VA, and even though vet centers are separate from the VA, they're still actually
They're still a subsidiary of the VA.
They're funded by the VA, but they're civilian run.
correct.
So it is a part of the VA system, but I like to look at it as it's the civilians who care that actually work at the VA. The vet centers versus the VA.
I got lucky. My readjustment counselor is a vet, and I believe he's in the National Guard as well still, so.
Okay.
And that being
Let's-
said, there's also lots of civilians that work at the VA that care.
Right,
Let's be
right.
very-
And let's all right.
John's making very big generalizations.
Right, I'm
that-
gonna stop with my generalizations. If you work at the VA and you care about our vets, thank you very much,
Yes.
and we do appreciate you. It's just I'm
in
gonna
a
stop
general,
talking.
in a general
But,
sense, I know what he means, and I
so
think that everybody watching this show probably does as well.
Let's move on to your plans for the future or your wants for the future. We've been talking for a long time about some of the different things you want to see happen or you want to do yourself. Go ahead and.
So my long-term goals is to really, I'm getting to a point in my recovery and my understanding of my trauma and my comfortability with my trauma to see what's wrong in the system, whether it's a VA system or a civilian-run program, and use that as an advocacy to help veterans and to get the word out there and to let you know there's no limit. I can come back, John can come back, Jill can come back. Like, you can heal, you can survive.
And we can come together too. I think I'm one of those people we're stronger together than we are separate. And I mean, I'm glad to see that you're getting
Yes,
help
we're
now.
glad to see
We're
you're getting
very, very glad.
some of the help, but that was one of the things that you and I had spoke about earlier. Is you want to see more programs and you want to see more legislation passed on assisting MST survivors.
And you want to be able to help MST survivors. And we want you in the audience to know that if you are an MST survivor, please reach out to any one of the organizations or affiliates that we have, and we will do our best to get you the help that you need. And we're going to thank Mike for being on the show tonight. We have to wrap it up. So,
Mike Stern, thank you so much for coming in, man.
Yes.
We really appreciate it,
yeah,
telling your
shake
story.
hands
And
too. Well, you guys have a good night, and hopefully you have a good weekend. Thanks.